You're looking for the $20,000 envelope you intentionally slipped into my closet to frame me, I whispered, my voice low and steady, directly into the ear of my mother-in-law, who had suddenly gone pale as a ghost. Such a shame, Beatrice. I've already moved that money. It's now resting comfortably inside your guest of honor's handbag. And in just a moment, when that bag falls and its contents spill out, the morning began with the soft clinking of a ceramic mug against a marble countertop, a sound that sliced through the dining room's heavy silence. Clara placed a steaming cup of coffee in front of her husband, Ethan, who was fumbling with the knot of his silk tie. The rich aroma of a cheddar and bacon omelet wafted from the kitchen. But for Clara, the morning felt as bland and tasteless as all the ones that had come before it. Just a splash of cream, right, honey? Clara asked gently, making sure her husband's coffee was perfect. Ethan turned, a warm smile gracing his face as he patted his wife's hand. Yes, darling, perfect. Thank you. He inhaled deeply. God, that omelet smells incredible. My stomach is growling. Before Clara could return the smile, a sharp cough echoed from the grand staircase. Beatrice, her mother-in-law, descended, wrapped in a luxurious silk robe. Her face, already meticulously made up for the day, was a mask of rigid disapproval. Her eyes scanned the breakfast table with a familiar look of dissatisfaction. Coffee! And an omelet! Beatrice grumbled, pulling out a chair with a deliberate, scraping noise that grated on the ears. Ethan's stomach is sensitive. You can't just feed him greasy diner food first thing in the morning. We've been married to my son for 2 years. How have you not yet learned the habits of a well-established family? People in this house start their day with avocado toast on sourdough, fresh berries, perhaps a green smoothie. Not this provincial fare. Clara took a quiet breath, pressing a hand to the sudden tightness in her chest. She was used to this. These kinds of barbs were her daily bread. I'm sorry, Beatrice. Ethan asked for the omelet specifically. He missed dinner last night working late, Clara replied, her voice a model of calm. Ethan, his mouth already full, quickly intervened. It's delicious, Mom. Really. I asked for it. Would you like me to make you a plate? Beatrice scoffed, crossing her arms over her chest. Don't bother. I can get it myself. Besides, your wife's expertise seems to be limited to the kitchen. When I bring my friends over for our charity committee meetings, she just stands there with a blank look on her face. That's why I always said, Ethan, you need to marry someone on your level. Someone with the right background, the right breeding, not just a pretty face with a small-town pedigree. The words were like expertly thrown darts, hitting their mark deep in Clara's soul. She could only look down, her fingers twisting the fabric of the linen apron tied around her waist. Ethan stopped chewing and let out a heavy sigh, looking at his mother. Mom, please, it's too early. Let's not start, he said, his tone weary. Clara is my wife. Please, show her some respect. I'm just speaking the facts, Ethan. Beatrice's voice rose, her eyes glaring at Clara. You're a young director on the fast track. The future of the firm is in your hands. You need a partner who can elevate your status, not one I have to make excuses for at the country club. Clara drew a long, silent breath. She knew that arguing would only make Ethan's morning more stressful before he left for work. It's all right, honey. Finish your omelet before it gets cold. I'm going to take care of these dishes. Clara walked towards the kitchen, leaving the palpable tension behind her. From behind the kitchen wall, she could still hear the faint drone of Beatrice's lecture to Ethan about what a proper wife should be. Clara turned the faucet on full blast, the sound of rushing water drowning out the pain in her heart. She had no idea that this morning's insults were merely the prelude to a cruel and calculated plan her mother-in-law had already set in motion. By mid-afternoon, the atmosphere in the house had shifted dramatically. Ethan, who usually didn't get home until late in the evening, called the house, his voice rushed and buzzing with excitement. Beatrice answered the phone, and within minutes, the entire household was in a state of controlled chaos. Maria, Clara, get to the living room, now! Beatrice's shout echoed from the first floor, resounding through the stately home. Clara, who was folding laundry upstairs, hurried down. She found her mother-in-law pacing the foyer, her face flushed with a triumphant glow, her cell phone clutched in one hand. Maria, Their middle-aged housekeeper stood nervously in a corner, looking bewildered. "What is it, Beatrice? You seem panicked," Clara asked cautiously. Beatrice shot Clara a dismissive look, her eyes raking over her from head to toe. "Not panicked, busy. Do you have any idea who is coming here this afternoon?" Victoria Sterling. The Victoria Sterling, owner of the largest real estate development firm in the state. She's the lead potential investor for Ethan's new project. If Mrs. Sterling agrees to fund this, Ethan's company will skyrocket. Beatrice's eyes burned with a fierce ambition. This is a golden opportunity. Mrs. Sterling is a perfectionist. She notices every detail and has zero tolerance for anything that seems common or unsophisticated. That's why this house needs to be immaculate by the time she arrives. "Maria, I want you to re-clean the entire guest area. Use the expensive French lavender room spray, not that cheap stuff from the grocery store." "Yes, ma'am," Maria replied, nodding quickly before scurrying towards the cleaning supply closet. Beatrice then turned her attention to Clara, her expression becoming icy and severe. "And you, listen to me very carefully. This afternoon, you are not to join us in the living room. Your only job is to prepare Mrs. Sterling's favorite chamomile tea, the loose-leaf kind, and arrange some of the macarons from the bakery I like on a platter. And remember, use the crystal tea set from the display cabinet. After you've served her, you go straight to your room. Do not linger. Do not try to make conversation." Clara's brow furrowed. "But Beatrice, surely Ethan would want me to be there to welcome such an important guest." "Don't argue with me," Beatrice snapped. "What do you think you and Victoria Sterling would possibly discuss? The rising price of organic kale at the farmer's market? This is business. This is for high-powered people. Your presence in that room would only be a distraction and make Ethan look weak for having such an unpolished wife. Do you understand?" Clara's heart sank, but she kept her expression neutral. She was too exhausted to fight. "Fine, Beatrice. I'll prepare everything in the kitchen." "Good. Know your place," Beatrice hissed. "Oh, and one more thing. Change out of those jeans. Put on a nice blouse, even if you're only coming out to serve drinks. I won't be mistaken for an employer who doesn't properly dress her help." After delivering her final, cutting remarks, Beatrice turned and ascended the stairs to her bedroom, already planning the perfect designer dress to wear for her guest of honor. Clara stood frozen in the middle of the room, her hands clenched so tightly her knuckles turned white. "Patience, Clara, patience," she whispered to herself. She took a deep breath and walked to the kitchen to begin polishing the crystal her mother-in-law had demanded. She was completely unaware that upstairs, Beatrice was smiling into her vanity mirror, plotting something far more vicious than mere verbal abuse. At 3 o'clock, Beatrice emerged from her room carrying a medium-sized leather handbag. She walked over to the dining table where Clara was carefully arranging macarons on a tiered platter. Without a word, Beatrice placed her bag on the table and unzipped it. From inside, she produced a thick manila envelope, stuffed so full that its edges were beginning to tear. She deliberately turned the envelope over, allowing a peek at the crisp edges of $100 bills inside. Clara, busy with her task, glanced over at the envelope. "Look at this," Beatrice said, her tone boastful, designed to capture Clara's full attention. "This is $20,000 in cash. It's the donation money from my ladies' charity circle for the new pediatric wing at the Children's Hospital." Clara simply nodded politely. "That's wonderful, Beatrice. It will certainly make a big difference for the hospital." "Of course it will," Beatrice said, patting the envelope proudly. "People trust me with their money because I have a reputation for integrity. They know I'm an honest person, unlike some people from humble beginnings who get greedy at the sight of cash." The insinuation was unmistakable. Clara chose to remain silent, feigning focus on the pastries before her. "A sum this large can't just be left lying around," Beatrice continued, her voice deliberately loud. "I'm going to lock this in my bedroom safe right now, and you are to never, under any circumstances, enter my room. Understand? If even a single dollar of this goes missing, I'll know exactly who the first suspect is." "I would never dare enter your room without being invited," Clara replied softly, struggling to keep her tone respectful even as her blood boiled. Beatrice smirked. "Good that you know your place. The temptations for the poor are strong when they see easy money. I'm just giving you a fair warning." Satisfied that she had thoroughly demoralized her daughter-in-law, Beatrice picked up the thick envelope, placed it back in her handbag, and strode arrogantly back towards her upstairs bedroom. The sound of her door slamming shut was a clear assertion of her dominance. Clara let out a long, shaky breath. She stared blankly at the tower of colorful macarons, her head spinning from her mother-in-law's increasingly cruel behavior. She hurried to finish her work, desperate for a few moments of peace in her own room before Victoria Sterling and Ethan arrived. But she didn't know that once Beatrice's bedroom door was closed, the older woman didn't walk towards her safe at all. Instead, Beatrice crept silently to a side door that connected her suite to a rear balcony, a route that gave her direct access to Ethan and Clara's bedroom without using the main staircase. In her hand, she clutched the manila envelope containing $20,000. A vicious, hateful smile played on her red-painted lips. "Your time in this house is over, Clara," Beatrice thought cruelly. "I will make sure Ethan throws you out of here with the disgraceful label of a common thief." At 4 o'clock, the afternoon sun slanted through the windows of Clara's bedroom. All the preparations in the kitchen were complete. Maria was sweeping the front porch, while Beatrice was still getting ready in her room. Clara finally had a moment to herself. She went to her bedroom, intending to change into a more suitable outfit as her mother-in-law had commanded. As she searched for a blouse in her closet, her eyes were drawn to the stack of Ethan's freshly pressed work shirts on a low shelf. Something was wrong. The stack was crooked and disheveled. She distinctly remembered ironing and stacking them perfectly that morning. Did Ethan come home to grab a shirt? Clara mumbled to herself. But that was impossible. Her husband hadn't returned yet. Driven by a strange curiosity, Clara knelt and lifted the stack of shirts. Her eyes widened in an instant. The breath caught in her throat. Her heart began to pound against her ribs as if she had just found a venomous snake coiled in her closet. There, underneath her husband's shirts, lay a thick manila envelope, an incredibly thick one, and from a tear at the corner, the green and black of $100 bills, held together by a rubber band, was clearly visible. It was her mother-in-law's charity money. Clara stumbled back a step, her hands flying to her mouth. Her mind raced. How did this get in here? Who put it here? Her thoughts immediately flashed back to an hour earlier, when Beatrice had so deliberately flaunted the money at the dining table, when she had threatened her, calling her a poor girl who was easily tempted. Like pieces of a puzzle snapping together with horrifying speed, Clara understood the terrible scenario being played out. "It's a trap," her mind screamed in silent terror. "She planted the money in my closet." She quickly analyzed the situation. The money was hidden under Ethan's clothes, not hers. Why? Of course, to make it look more convincing. If Beatrice discovered it during a search, it would seem as though Clara, in a panic, had hastily stashed it among her husband's things to avoid suspicion. Or worse, Beatrice wanted Ethan himself to find the money while getting a shirt, so he would feel personally betrayed by his own wife. Clara's body began to tremble. This wasn't just another cutting remark. This was a calculated act of slander that could destroy her life. If this money were found here, in her room, no one would believe her. Ethan, no matter how much he loved her, would waver when faced with the physical evidence of $20,000 in cash in his own closet, especially with a crucial witness like Victoria Sterling present. Her status as a daughter-in-law from a modest background would instantly become a guilty verdict in everyone's eyes. She would be thrown out, divorced in disgrace, and could even face jail time. A cold fear crept up her spine. Beads of sweat formed on her temples. Her first instinct was to run to Beatrice's room, throw the money in her face, and scream in rage. But her hand froze midair. "Don't be a fool, Clara," a rational voice in her head warned. "If you confront her now, she'll just start screaming hysterically, accusing you of getting caught and trying to return the money out of fear. She will twist the entire story. So what could she do? Throw it in the trash? Take it out of the house? There wasn't enough time. Victoria and Ethan could arrive any minute. If she were seen carrying a suspicious envelope out of her room, it would be tantamount to suicide." Clara stared at the manila envelope. In the midst of her escalating panic, a strange, profound calm suddenly settled over her mind. The trembling in her hands stopped. Her fear evaporated, replaced by an intense, ice-cold anger. For 2 years, she had been silent. For 2 years, she had endured every insult to maintain peace in her family. But this was an attempt at character assassination. Her mother-in-law had crossed a line. If Beatrice wanted to play dirty, then Clara would show her how to win the game without getting her own hands soiled. Clara took a deep, steadying breath and exhaled slowly. The panic was completely gone. Her face was now a placid mask, as smooth as the surface of a still lake that hides a terrifying depth. She knelt, reached out her hand, and picked up the thick manila envelope from the bottom of the closet. The $20,000 felt heavy in her hand, as heavy as the lie designed to ruin her. "You want to play games with me, Beatrice?" Clara whispered, her voice chillingly quiet in the silent room. A faint, knowing smile, one she had never shown anyone in this house, touched the corners of her lips. "Let's see who will be crying by the end of the day." Clara scanned her room. She couldn't hide the money anywhere else inside. She was certain her mother-in-law would demand a thorough search later. Hiding it in the kitchen or living room was too risky. Maria might find it. Her eyes then landed on the navy blue cooking apron she had hung on the back of her bedroom door earlier. It was made of thick canvas, with 2 large pockets on the front. Without a moment's hesitation, Clara folded the thick envelope slightly to make it more compact, then slid it into the right pocket of the apron. The pocket was deep enough to swallow the envelope completely, leaving no obvious bulge, as long as she kept moving and didn't stand perfectly still. She then changed into a neat, long-sleeved blouse and a pair of tailored slacks. She quickly brushed her hair, applied a light touch of makeup to look fresh, and then put the navy apron back on. Perfect. She looked like a diligent young hostess, busy preparing for an important guest. No one would ever suspect that hidden in her apron pocket was $20,000 in hot money. Ding dong. The sound of the doorbell chimed through the house, shattering the afternoon quiet. Through her bedroom window, Clara could hear the soft purr of a luxury sedan pulling into the driveway. From downstairs, she heard Beatrice's hurried footsteps, followed by her shrill voice calling for the housekeeper. "Maria. Maria, get the door. They're here." "Oh my God, is my makeup straight?" Clara glanced at her reflection in the closet mirror one last time. She gently patted the right pocket of her apron. "Everything is going to be fine," she murmured to herself. This was her first move. Her mother-in-law had set a meticulous trap, placing her pawn in a fatal position. But Beatrice had forgotten one crucial rule of chess. The most dangerous piece isn't the king or the queen. It's the underestimated pawn that quietly advances all the way to the other side of the board. With calm, measured steps and her head held high, Clara opened her bedroom door and walked downstairs. She was ready to greet her guest of honor. She was ready for the war her mother-in-law had started. The massive, carved oak front door swung open. Maria bowed her head respectfully, holding her breath. Standing on the threshold was the woman who had sent the entire house into a frenzy, Victoria Sterling. The older woman's aura instantly commanded the room. She wore a bespoke silk dress in shades of gold and brown that draped her figure elegantly. Her hair was swept into a chic, modern chignon, not a single strand out of place. Diamond jewelry glittered at her neck and wrist, catching the light from the crystal chandelier in the foyer. But her most striking feature was her sharp, intimidating gaze, the look of a high-powered executive accustomed to being in charge. Behind her, a uniformed driver carrying a few small gift bags bowed politely before returning to the car. "Victoria, good afternoon." "Oh my goodness, it is such an honor to have you in our humble home," Beatrice chirped, her voice high and cheerful. She practically jogged down the stairs, her arms outstretched as if welcoming a lifelong friend, though they had only met twice at charity events. Beatrice's demeanor had done a complete 180-degree turn. Gone was the snarling, cynical woman who had berated Clara that morning. In her place was a woman whose face was plastered with an overly sweet, forced smile. Victoria accepted Beatrice's extended hand with a polite but reserved smile of her own. "Good afternoon, Beatrice. I hope you'll forgive me for being a bit earlier than scheduled." The traffic was surprisingly light. Victoria's voice was deep, calm, and authoritative, a stark contrast to Beatrice's gushing enthusiasm. "Oh, not at all, not at all. We're thrilled you're here early. Please, come in, have a seat." Beatrice, gestured extravagantly towards the cream-colored leather sofa in the main living room. As Victoria walked towards the sofa, Clara, standing near a pillar in the foyer, noticed a crucial detail. Tucked under Victoria's left arm was a genuine Hermes Birkin bag in classic black, with gold hardware. The luxury bag, worth tens of thousands of dollars, was not fully latched. Its top was slightly agape, revealing a long wallet and a designer glasses case inside. Victoria sat down gracefully, placing the Hermes bag right next to her on a plush sofa cushion. It was in a very strategic position. "Has Ethan not returned yet?" Victoria asked, her eyes sweeping the room, which had been doused in an overpowering amount of fragrance by Maria. "Oh, my son is on his way, Victoria. He just called, said he's about 15 minutes out. You know how it is. A young, successful director has so much to manage at the office," Beatrice laughed, trying to subtly boast about her son. Her eyes then fell on Clara, who was still standing by the pillar. Beatrice's face tightened for a fraction of a second before she forced the smile back on. "Ah, and this is my daughter-in-law, Clara," Beatrice said quickly, her tone laced with reluctance. "Clara, come and say hello to Mrs. Sterling. Then you can go straight to the kitchen and prepare that special chamomile tea for our guest." Clara stepped forward calmly. She inclined her head slightly, offering a genuine and polite smile. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Sterling. Welcome to our home." Victoria looked Clara over from head to toe. Her gaze wasn't demeaning like her mother-in-law's. It was appraising. She noted the simple but elegant blouse Clara wore, her natural makeup, and above all, her composed demeanor. "Good afternoon, Clara. Thank you for the welcome. I'll be in the back preparing your refreshments, ma'am," Clara said softly. Without waiting for a sarcastic dismissal from Beatrice, she turned and walked towards the kitchen. Her right hand slipped into the pocket of her navy apron, feeling the coarse texture of the thick manila envelope hidden inside. Her heart began to beat faster, but her steps remained steady. The game had just begun. In the kitchen, Clara worked with quiet efficiency. She took the crystal teacups her mother-in-law had demanded from the glass cabinet. Her hands were steady as she poured hot water into a teapot filled with dried chamomile flowers. A soothing, delicate fragrance filled the kitchen air, a complete contradiction to the storm raging inside her chest. From the living room, she could hear the faint murmur of conversation, or rather, the sound of Beatrice dominating the conversation, endlessly talking about how brilliant Ethan's project was and how lucky Victoria would be to invest in it. Victoria's responses were mostly brief hums or one or two-word answers. It was clear the powerful woman was already growing weary of Beatrice's cheap flattery. Suddenly, the sound of hurried footsteps approached the kitchen. Beatrice appeared around the corner. The sweet smile she wore for her guest had vanished, replaced by a venomous scowl as she looked at Clara. "What's taking you so long just to make tea?" Beatrice hissed in a half-whisper, her eyes wide and menacing. "Remember, don't you dare embarrass me. Serve the tea, put it on the table, and then get out of sight. I'm going to use the powder room to touch up my lipstick. And also," Beatrice deliberately paused. She stared intently into Clara's eyes, searching for any sign of panic. "Also, I'm going to check my safe. I want to make sure that charity money from this afternoon is secure. I suddenly have a very bad feeling, as if there's a thief in this house." A cynical smile played on Beatrice's lips. She was signaling her plan. She was relishing her own little drama, eagerly anticipating the moment she would emerge from her room, screaming that the money was gone. But Clara didn't give her the reaction she wanted. Clara's face remained impassive. She calmly arranged a small jar of sugar cubes on the serving tray. "The tea is ready, Beatrice. I'll take it out now." Seeing her daughter-in-law so unnervingly composed and immune to her threats, Beatrice clicked her tongue in annoyance. "Fine. And you'd better not mess this up," she threatened quietly, before turning and heading down the hall that led to the guest bathroom and the back stairs to her room. This was the moment. Beatrice had just given her a wide-open opportunity. Her mother-in-law was off to orchestrate her discovery of the theft, leaving Clara alone to face Victoria Sterling in the living room. A golden opportunity like this wouldn't come twice. Clara lifted the silver tray holding the crystal teapot, 2 cups, and the tiered platter of macarons. She walked out of the kitchen, through the dining area, and slowly approached the living room. Her mind was calculating rapidly. The distance from the coffee table to the sofa, the position of the Hermes bag, Victoria's line of sight. Everything had to be perfect. "Your chamomile tea, Mrs. Sterling," Clara said softly as she reached the table. Victoria, who had been studying a painting on the wall, turned. Her expression, which had been tense with boredom, softened slightly at Clara's arrival. "Thank you, Clara. It smells wonderful." "You're welcome, ma'am. This is a special blend of flowers that we dry ourselves, not from a tea bag, so the aroma is much richer and more relaxing," Clara explained casually as she began to pour the tea into a crystal cup. Victoria raised an eyebrow, looking intrigued. "Oh, you dry them yourself? It's rare to find a young person with the patience for such things these days. Beatrice is lucky to have such a diligent daughter-in-law." Clara just offered a small, humble smile. "It's just a little hobby to pass the time." She placed the steaming teacup directly in front of Victoria. Clara was now standing at the side of the table, less than 2 feet from the open Hermes bag on the sofa. Her eyes quickly darted to the bag's interior. It was spacious. The envelope would slide in smoothly without getting caught. Now, she just needed a distraction. Just 1 second where Victoria would look away. As if the universe itself was on her side, a loud buzzing sound came from the coffee table. Victoria's phone, placed near a vase, lit up, displaying the name Mr. Davies, assistant. Victoria sighed, looking slightly annoyed by the call. "I do apologize, Clara. Business seems to follow me everywhere." "Please, ma'am, don't worry about it," Clara replied, taking a step back to give her space. Victoria picked up her phone and swiped the screen to answer. Perhaps because the connection was poor, she instinctively turned her head towards the large window to her right, away from the table and away from her handbag, pressing a finger to her other ear. "Hello? Yes. What about the financial report? I thought I made it clear it needed to be revised before 5. Victoria's tone became sharp, her attention now completely absorbed by the phone call. Now, Clara's instincts took over. Her body moved faster than her mind, but with the grace of a magician performing sleight of hand. While pretending to straighten the platter of macarons on the table, her left hand rested on the edge of the table. Her right hand, in a fluid and silent motion, slipped into the pocket of her navy apron. Her fingers closed around the thick manila envelope. She leaned forward slightly, as if she were just checking the placement of a small pastry fork. In a split-second movement that was nearly invisible to the naked eye, her right hand shot towards the sofa. She positioned her hand directly over the opening of the black Hermes bag and then released her grip. Thump! The envelope containing $20,000 slid silently into the bag, its landing muffled by the soft, expensive leather at the bottom. Its brown color was instantly camouflaged by the dark shadows inside the deep bag. The new weight inside caused the bag's opening to close slightly, hiding the envelope from view completely. Clara's right hand was immediately back on the table, adjusting a small napkin next to the teapot. Her breathing was even. Her face was calm. She swallowed once, feeling the wild thumping of her heart against her ribs, but on the outside, she was as serene as a wax statue. Done. A perfect execution. Victoria ended her call with an irritated sigh and placed her phone back on the table. She turned back to Clara, completely unaware that a ticking time bomb, assembled by the hostess herself, now lay dormant inside her prized handbag. "My apologies. My staff can sometimes be less than thorough if I'm not watching them directly," Victoria lamented as she reached for her teacup. "I'm sure running such a large company must be exhausting, ma'am," Clara replied with genuine-sounding sympathy, her face a mask of absolute calm. "Please, try the tea. I hope it can help you relax a bit." Victoria took a sip, and her eyes lit up. "This is excellent. The blend is perfect." Clara bowed her head respectfully. "Thank you, ma'am. If you'll excuse me, I should go check on the rest of the food. Ethan should be here any moment." "Of course. Please do," Victoria replied, her tone now significantly warmer than when she first arrived. Clara turned and walked slowly back towards the kitchen. The moment she was out of sight, past the wall separating the living room, her knees suddenly felt weak. She leaned against the cool wall, shut her eyes tightly, and took a deep, gulping breath. She had done it. The trap money was no longer in her possession. Now, All she had to do was wait for her mother-in-law to detonate the stage she had so carefully built for herself. 2 minutes passed. Clara was rinsing her hands at the kitchen sink when the quiet of the house was suddenly shattered by a blood-curdling scream. "No! Oh God, no! My money! The foundation money is gone!" The shriek came from the second-floor landing. The voice was hoarse, piercing, and filled with a feigned panic designed for maximum dramatic effect. It was Beatrice. Clara quickly turned off the water. The corner of her mouth twitched, suppressing a cold smile. "It's showtime," she thought. She grabbed a hand towel, dried her fingers, and then ran out towards the front of the house, her face a carefully crafted mask of panic. In the living room, Victoria nearly choked on her tea. She set her cup down with a sharp clatter on its saucer. The elegant woman stood up from the sofa, her face a mixture of shock and extreme annoyance. From the staircase, Beatrice came stumbling down, her gait exaggerated and theatrical. Her hair was intentionally mussed, and she clutched her head as if the world were collapsing around her. Fake tears welled in her eyes. "What on earth is going on, Beatrice? Why are you screaming?" Victoria demanded, her tone sharp. For her, this kind of outburst was utterly classless. Beatrice collapsed onto a single armchair, directly across from Victoria. She began to sob hysterically, covering her face with her hands. "My money, Victoria! The money I was holding for the new orphanage wing. $20,000 in cash. It's gone! Stolen from the safe in my room." Maria, who had been ironing in the back utility room, came running, out of breath. "Oh my God, ma'am. Gone? What do you mean, gone?" "It's gone, Maria! Gone!" Beatrice wailed. She then looked up, her tear-filled eyes sweeping the room before landing with piercing intensity on Clara, who was standing at the edge of the living room. Beatrice's finger shot out, pointing directly at her daughter-in-law's face. "It had to be someone who went into my room, and the only people in this house all day, besides me and Maria, were you, Clara," Beatrice accused, her voice booming. Clara stepped forward, her expression a convincing blend of confusion and shock. "My goodness, Beatrice, what are you saying? I've been busy in the kitchen and cleaning the downstairs all day. I haven't been upstairs at all, let alone in your room. Maria is my witness." Maria nodded hesitantly. "That's right, ma'am. Miss Clara was helping me in the kitchen all afternoon, preparing for Mrs. Sterling. Don't you dare cover for her, Maria," Beatrice snapped viciously. She stood up and stalked towards Clara, her eyes blazing. "This afternoon, I showed you that money right here at the dining table, didn't I? I saw the greedy look in your eyes when you saw how much there was. You must have snuck upstairs while I was in the shower, used a spare key to get into my safe, and then hid it somewhere." Victoria, witnessing this cheap spectacle, massaged her temples. This was mortifying. "Beatrice, please, calm down. Let's not make baseless accusations. This is a serious matter. That's not a small amount of money. Shouldn't you just call the police and have them handle it properly?" she suggested, her voice cold. Hearing the word police, Beatrice's face paled for a moment. Calling the police was the last thing she wanted. They would conduct a real investigation, check for fingerprints, and quickly discover that there was no forced entry into the safe, that the money was, in fact, taken out by her. No need for the police just yet, Victoria. This is a private family matter, Beatrice countered quickly, her voice trembling slightly before she regained her composure. She turned her furious glare back to Clara. "We will settle this right here. I know how people with no money think. Their hands get itchy when they see cash lying around. I bet the proof is right in this girl's room." "How dare you accuse me like this?" Clara retorted, her voice trembling as if she were holding back tears of indignation. She had to play the part of the wronged victim perfectly. "If you don't believe me, then please, search the entire house. Search my room." Beatrice's eyes gleamed with triumph when she heard that. The bait had been taken. Clara herself was challenging her to search the room. Her plan was unfolding flawlessly. "All right, if that's what you want. We'll search your room right now," Beatrice exclaimed, nearly forgetting her act of grief in her excitement. At that exact moment, the familiar hum of a car engine was heard in the garage. The front door opened quickly, and Ethan stepped inside, still in his work suit. His face was tired, but he was trying to smile for his important guest. His smile vanished instantly when he saw the scene in his living room. His mother stood with a red, furious face. Maria looked terrified. Clara was standing with tears in her eyes, and Victoria Sterling, his most important potential investor, was sitting with a stiff and uncomfortable expression. "What's going on here? Why is everyone shouting?" Ethan asked, confused, as he walked further into the room. "Victoria, good afternoon. I am so sorry I'm late. There was an accident on the freeway. But what's the problem here?" Beatrice rushed to her son, grabbing the sleeve of his suit jacket. Her tears started flowing again, this time more dramatically. "Ethan, thank God you're home. You have to teach your wife a lesson. She had the audacity to steal my money." Ethan was stunned. His eyes widened as he looked at his mother, then at Clara, who was slowly shaking her head. "Steal? What money, Mom? Don't just say things like that." "We have a guest," Ethan hissed, feeling a wave of intense embarrassment that this domestic dispute was happening in front of Victoria. "The $20,000 for the foundation. Ethan, it's gone from my safe." Beatrice pointed a trembling finger at Clara's face over Ethan's shoulder. "And I am 100% certain this girl from the country took it. She saw me with the money earlier today, and her eyes turned green with envy. You need to wake up, Ethan. Your wife is nothing but a parasite in this family." "That's enough, Mom," Ethan yelled, his voice echoing off the high ceilings. His patience had finally run out. He knew his mother disliked Clara, but accusing his wife of being a thief in front of a business partner was a monstrous insult. "Clara would never do something like that. She's my wife. I provide for her every need. Why would she steal foundation money?" Ethan defended her fiercely, walking over to Clara and putting a protective arm around her trembling shoulders. Clara lowered her head, hiding a faint smile behind her hair. Ethan's defense was a very sweet bonus. Beatrice sneered, putting her hands on her hips as she challenged her son. "You've been completely bewitched by this woman, Ethan. When someone is fundamentally greedy, no amount of money will ever satisfy them. If you're so sure she's innocent, then prove it. Do you have the courage to come with me and search her room right now?" The challenge was thrown down like a gauntlet, loud enough for Victoria to hear every word. Beatrice was intentionally backing Ethan into a corner. If he refused, he would look like he was protecting a thief. If he agreed, he would be the one to find the evidence in his own closet. A brilliant plan, Beatrice thought. Ethan turned to look at Clara, his eyes searching for reassurance. "Honey, I swear, I didn't take a single dollar of your mother's money, Ethan." Clara cut in, her voice clear and firm as she looked directly into her husband's eyes. "If searching our room is the only way to clear my name and prove that your mother is wrong, then please, do it. Let's go to the room now. Maria, please come with us as a witness." "Fine. We'll check now," Ethan decided, his jaw tight. He turned to Victoria with a look of deep regret. "Victoria, I sincerely apologize for this inconvenience. Please, give us 5 minutes to resolve this family misunderstanding. Please, enjoy your tea." Victoria simply crossed her legs, her expression unreadable. "Go ahead, Ethan. Settle your domestic affairs. I'll wait here. I must say, I'm also curious to see who is really playing with fire in this house." Victoria's words were laced with a sharp, double meaning, but Beatrice was too blinded by her own ambition to notice. "Let's go. Let's see who will be on their knees, begging for forgiveness in a few minutes," Beatrice exclaimed triumphantly, striding ahead of them towards the stairs like a general about to claim a decisive victory on the battlefield. Ethan held Clara's hand tightly, guiding her behind his mother. Maria followed them timidly. Clara walked in silence. Her right hand squeezed her husband's, offering him a false sense of calm. Her eyes were fixed on the back of her mother-in-law, who was walking so arrogantly ahead of them. "Yes, Beatrice," Clara thought coldly. "We are about to see who will be weeping and lose everything today." Downstairs, in the now quiet living room, Victoria shifted on the sofa to get more comfortable. As she did, her elbow accidentally nudged her Hermes Birkin bag. The bag rocked slightly, emitting a soft rustle from its contents, which were now heavier by one thick, brown envelope, just waiting to be discovered. The sound of determined footsteps pounding on the polished hardwood stairs broke the tense silence. Beatrice led the procession, her chin held high, her chest puffed out with confidence. Her steps were quick and sure, like those of an executioner eager to get on with his work. Behind her, Ethan held Clara's hand tightly, his face a mask of disbelief and suppressed rage. Maria trailed at the very end of the line, her head bowed, silently praying for the ordeal to be over. The door to the master bedroom, where Ethan and Clara slept, was shoved open so forcefully by Beatrice that it slammed against the wall. The room was immaculate. The bedspread was taut without a single wrinkle. The pillows were arranged symmetrically, and the soft scent of lavender filled the air. But to Beatrice, this tidiness was merely a facade for her daughter-in-law's deceit. "We'll start here," Beatrice announced loudly, letting her voice echo down to the first floor. She marched straight to the large sliding door closet that dominated one wall of the room. Ethan stood in the doorway, watching his mother with a hardened jaw. "Mom, don't take this too far. If you don't find anything, you will apologize to Clara, right here, and then again in front of Mrs. Sterling." "Apologize? Ha! We'll see who's begging for forgiveness soon enough," Beatrice retorted with a harsh, cynical laugh. With a single, rough pull, Beatrice slid the closet door open. Her eyes immediately zeroed in on the bottom shelf, where Ethan's work shirts were neatly stacked. Her hands moved quickly, filled with a blind certainty. She had rehearsed this moment over and over in her mind. She would lift the stack of shirts, find the thick manila envelope, hold it up high as evidence, and then slap the face of her sanctimonious daughter-in-law. She grabbed the entire stack of ironed shirts and lifted them at once. But the triumphant smile that had begun to form on her red lips suddenly vanished. Her hands felt nothing but the smooth wood of the empty shelf. There was nothing there except for a sheet of floral-patterned shelf liner. Beatrice's eyes widened. Her heart skipped a beat. She leaned further in, her nose almost touching the shelf, making sure her eyes weren't deceiving her. She violently swept the remaining shirts onto the floor. Still empty. "Huh?" Beatrice mumbled, her voice sounding hoarse and confused. "Well, Mom?" Ethan's voice came from the doorway, cold and demanding. "Where is it? Where is the foundation money you said my wife stole? Where did she hide it?" Beatrice swallowed hard. It felt like swallowing gravel. Wait. She must have moved it to another shelf," she stammered, trying to hide the tremor of panic that was beginning to course through her veins. Clara just stood silently beside her husband, her face a perfect portrait of anxiety and pain. But behind her eyes, there was an immense satisfaction as she watched her mother-in-law start to unravel. Panic now completely overwhelmed Beatrice. She was 100% certain she herself had placed the envelope there just a few hours ago. The fact that it was gone made her feel as if she were being mocked by a ghost. "It has to be here. I mean, she must have hidden it somewhere more secure," Beatrice shouted. Her hands now moved with frantic energy. She yanked open dresser drawers, dumping their contents underwear, socks, handkerchiefs onto the floor. The metallic clang of hangers filled the air as she violently pushed aside dresses and suits. The clothes that Clara had so carefully pressed were now a crumpled mess on the floor, being trampled by Beatrice's high-heeled slippers. "Mom, stop it!" Ethan yelled, his patience pushed to its absolute limit. His bedroom now looked like it had been hit by a tornado. But Beatrice didn't care. Her breathing became ragged. Beads of sweat dotted her forehead and temples, smearing her expensive foundation. She dropped to her knees, peering under the bed, pulling out shoeboxes, even tearing through the dirty laundry hamper. "Where did you put it, you deceitful little witch?" Beatrice shrieked, whipping her head around to glare at Clara with bloodshot eyes. Her perfectly coiffed hair was now coming undone, with strands sticking to her sweaty face. She no longer looked like an elegant matriarch, but like a madwoman desperately searching for a needle in a haystack. "I swear to God, Beatrice, I know nothing about that money. I haven't even been in this room since this afternoon," Clara answered, her voice trembling as if on the verge of tears. She leaned her head on Ethan's shoulder, playing the part of the helpless victim. Ethan strode forward, grabbed his mother's arm as she was trying to ransack Clara's vanity drawer, and forcefully pulled her to her feet. "Enough, Mom! Enough!" he roared, his voice so loud it made Maria jump in the doorway. "You have destroyed our room. You have humiliated my wife. And for what? There is no proof. There is no money here." But it was here, Ethan. You don't understand. That money, Beatrice stammered, gasping for breath. She wanted to scream that the money had to be there because she was the one who put it there. But saying that would expose her entire wicked plot. It's a lot of money, Ethan. It couldn't just vanish. She must have taken it out or what, Mom? Ethan shot back, his chest heaving with explosive anger. Or did you misplace it somewhere and decided to find a scapegoat to cover up your own carelessness? You are always looking for an excuse to get rid of Clara, but this time you went too far. A false accusation of theft in front of our biggest potential investor. Do you have any idea what the consequences of this are for my company? Ethan's words hit Beatrice like a physical blow. She stood frozen, her mind a blank. How could her perfect plan have gone so horribly, horribly wrong? Where in God's name was that damned envelope? In the middle of the suffocating tension, the sharp ring of a cell phone cut through the silence. Ethan reached into his suit pocket. The screen displayed Mr. Davies, assistant. Ethan cursed under his breath, rubbing his exhausted face. He couldn't ignore this call, not when his company was at such a critical juncture with Victoria Sterling's investment. Maria, Ethan called out, his tone commanding. Please go back downstairs. Make sure Mrs. Sterling's tea is still warm. Tell her I apologize, but I have an urgent call from my office. I'll be down shortly. Yes, sir, Maria stammered, quickly turning and hurrying down the stairs. Ethan then fixed his mother with a piercing glare. Mom, don't you touch another thing in this room. We will discuss this after Mrs. Sterling leaves. He then turned to Clara, his expression softening. Honey, I'm just going to take this call on the balcony. You stay here. Clara nodded obediently. Okay, sweetie. Ethan turned, walked out of the bedroom, and headed towards the small balcony at the end of the second-floor hallway, sliding the glass door shut behind him for privacy. Now, in the trashed bedroom, only Beatrice and Clara remained. The atmosphere shifted instantly. The silence that descended was heavy, oppressive. Beatrice was still standing in the middle of the room, breathing heavily. Her eyes stared blankly at the clothes strewn across the floor. Her mind was drawing a complete blank. She felt as if she had fallen into a black hole of her own digging. Then, she heard the sound of very soft footsteps. Beatrice looked up. Clara was no longer leaning against the doorframe with a pitiful look on her face. Her daughter-in-law was walking towards her with a slow, deliberate grace. The tears were gone from her eyes. Her shoulders, once trembling, were now held straight and strong, and on her face was a faint smile that could freeze blood. Clara stopped directly in front of her mother-in-law, less than 2 feet away. The scent of Beatrice's panicked sweat, mixed with her expensive perfume, was sharp in the air. With a slow, theatrical movement, Clara leaned forward, bringing her face close to Beatrice's right ear. Are you looking for the thick, manila envelope? Clara whispered. Her voice was incredibly soft, like poison being gently dripped into the ear, completely devoid of anger. Beatrice's body went rigid, as if struck by lightning. Her eyes flew wide open, but her tongue suddenly felt too thick to speak. The envelope with the $20,000 that you so carefully tucked under Ethan's shirts this afternoon? Clara continued, her whisper still deadly quiet. Such a shame, Beatrice. Your plan wasn't quite perfect. Beatrice pulled back slightly, staring at Clara with indescribable horror. Her lips trembled. You knew? She stammered. Clara's smile widened. Her dark eyes bored into her mother-in-law's, locking onto her terrified gaze without mercy. Of course, I knew, Beatrice. I'm the one who organizes this closet every single day. Did you really think I wouldn't notice a piece of rotting garbage smuggled inside? Clara whispered again. But don't you worry. Because I care so much about your reputation, I've already secured the money for you. I moved it out of this room. Where? Beatrice hissed, her hands clutching her own arms in a panic. If Clara had thrown it away or hidden it somewhere else in the house, she still had a chance to find it. Clara tilted her head slightly, savoring every second of her mother-in-law's mental collapse. I moved it to the safest place imaginable, Beatrice. A place you would never dare to touch, let alone search, Clara said casually, enunciating each word with crystal clarity so its meaning would sink deep into Beatrice's mind. I slipped it into Victoria Sterling's Hermes Birkin bag while it was sitting open on the sofa downstairs. It went in quite smoothly. Clara's final sentence hit Beatrice's chest like a sledgehammer. The world around her seemed to stop spinning. The air in the room felt like it had been sucked out, leaving her gasping for breath like a fish on dry land. Her heart, which had been racing, felt as if it had stopped completely for a moment. The blood drained from her face, leaving it a deathly white. Inside Mrs. Sterling's bag, inside the guest of honor's bag, Beatrice's cunning mind, which was usually so quick to devise schemes, processed this information and immediately presented her with a terrifying conclusion. If she went downstairs right now and screamed that Clara had moved the money into Victoria Sterling's bag, what would happen? Mrs. Sterling would certainly open her bag. And boom, there would be the envelope with $20,000 under Beatrice's foundation's name. Who would Victoria believe? Would she believe that a quiet, unassuming daughter-in-law suddenly had the audacious idea to stuff stolen money into a guest's purse? No. The sharp, businesslike logic of someone like Victoria Sterling would lead to only one conclusion. It was a bribe. Victoria would assume that Beatrice, who had been relentlessly lobbying her for an investment, had deliberately slipped the money into her bag as a cheap, insulting payoff. Victoria was the type of woman who valued her integrity above all else and was vehemently against such practices in her business dealings. If she felt she was being bribed in such a low-class manner, she wouldn't just refuse to invest in Ethan's company, she would utterly destroy Ethan's reputation among the city's business elite. And if Beatrice tried to explain the truth that she was actually trying to frame her own daughter-in-law, the outcome would be just as disastrous. Victoria would feel used and disgusted, dragged into a cheap and repulsive domestic drama. Even worse, Ethan would hear everything. Her own son would learn that his mother was a monster who tried to destroy his marriage with a vile lie. Beatrice was trapped, caught in an invisible cage built by her own arrogance, and the key was now held firmly in Clara's hand. Beatrice's knees gave out. She staggered and would have fallen if she hadn't caught herself on the edge of the mattress. Her body was shaking violently. A pure, thick, suffocating fear was now wrapped around her neck. The foundation money wasn't her own. It was donated funds she was responsible for. If the money left with Victoria and she didn't dare ask for it back, she would have to replace it with her own money, or she would be accused of embezzling funds. Checkmate. From every possible angle, she had been utterly defeated. Clara, standing tall before her, calmly adjusted the collar of her blouse, her composure a stark contrast to the scene of devastation in front of her. "You look so pale, Beatrice," Clara remarked, her tone dripping with false concern. She turned and walked towards the bedroom door. At the threshold, Clara glanced back at her mother-in-law, who was now sitting limply on the edge of the bed. "Come now, Beatrice. We shouldn't stay up here too long. It's rude to leave Mrs. Sterling alone downstairs for so long. You wouldn't want to offend her, would you?" Clara said. Her voice was as sweet as honey, but its edge was sharper than a razor. Without waiting for a response from her shell-shocked mother-in-law, Clara stepped out of the room, her stride light. Her expression had already shifted back to that of a dutiful, slightly traumatized daughter-in-law who had just been baselessly accused. A few minutes later, the three of them descended to the first floor. Ethan walked in front, his face still red with unresolved anger. He held Clara's hand, who walked beside him with her head lowered. Behind them, Beatrice walked like a zombie, her steps shuffling, her eyes vacant, and her breathing shallow. Her makeup was ruined, her hair a mess. She no longer cared about her appearance. The only thing occupying her mind was the manila envelope inside that deadly black handbag. When they reached the living room, Victoria was sipping her now cool tea with a bored expression. She set down her cup when she saw the family return. "Well, did you find the thief?" Victoria asked with a hint of sarcasm, her gaze fixed on the disheveled Beatrice. Ethan released Clara's hand, stepped forward, and bowed deeply before Victoria. "I am so sorry for this mortifying incident, Victoria. We have checked the entire room. No money was found, and my wife has been proven innocent. This was purely a matter of my mother's panic and misunderstanding. She's been exhausted and likely misplaced it." Ethan stressed the last few words, deliberately shaming his mother in the hopes she would finally learn her lesson. Victoria let out a long sigh. I'm glad to hear it. An accusation without proof can be slander, and that can destroy a person's reputation. Beatrice, I hope this incident is not a reflection of how this family intends to run a business. Precision and honesty are the cornerstones of success. The subtle jab hit Ethan hard. But for Beatrice, the words were just a dull buzz. Her eyes weren't on Victoria's face at all. From the moment she set foot back in the living room, her gaze was locked on a single object. The black Hermes Birkin bag perched elegantly on the sofa, right next to Victoria. It's in there, Beatrice's mind screamed. $20,000 is in there. Rational thought had completely abandoned Beatrice, replaced by a desperate, panic-driven impulse. She had to get that money back before Victoria left. She had to secure that foundation money, no matter what it took. Ignoring the confused looks from Ethan and Clara, Beatrice forced a laugh that sounded jarring and shrill. Ahaha, yes, Victoria, you're right. Quote, I've been so forgetful lately. It must be my age. How embarrassing. Beatrice walked towards the sofa, her steps unsteady. She didn't sit in the armchair where she had been before, but deliberately moved closer to the long sofa where Victoria and the Hermes bag were. My, it's so warm in here today, isn't it? Even for late afternoon, she said nervously, fanning her face with her hand. She then looked at the glass coffee table in front of Victoria, searching for an excuse. Oh dear, is that a bit of dust on the table? Maria's work is getting sloppy. Beatrice bent over, pretending to wipe the edge of the glass table with her hand. But her target wasn't the table. As she bent, she kept inching her body sideways, creeping closer to Victoria's bag. Her trembling hand secretly reached out. The tips of her fingers were just about to touch the metal zipper of the luxury bag. Beatrice. Victoria's cold voice stopped Beatrice's hand in midair. Beatrice looked up, startled. Victoria was staring at her with one eyebrow raised, her expression showing extreme discomfort at having her personal space invaded by the oddly behaving older woman. The table is perfectly clean. Please, don't trouble yourself, Victoria said firmly, a polite but clear command for Beatrice to back away. Oh, yes, it is clean. My apologies, Beatrice said, quickly retracting her hand and laughing awkwardly. Cold sweat dripped down the collar of her dress. But Beatrice wasn't giving up. Her panic made her reckless. She took a step back and then pretended to admire the Hermes bag. Wow, Victoria, is this the latest model? The leather is so lustrous, Beatrice complimented stiffly. She then reached out her hand again, this time with a much more aggressive movement. It's a shame to leave it on the sofa like this. It might get a tea stain or be crushed. Let me move it to that side table for you. It will be safer and more respected over there. Beatrice almost had her hand on the bag's strap. If she could just move it, she could pretend to trip while carrying it, make the bag fall, and retrieve her envelope in the ensuing chaos. But before her fingers could touch the strap, Victoria swiftly pulled her Birkin bag away, placing it protectively in her lap. Victoria's face now showed clear and undisguised displeasure. For a socialite like her, having her personal belongings touched without permission was a major breach of etiquette, especially by someone acting as erratically as Beatrice. That won't be necessary, Beatrice. My bag is fine right here. Besides, it contains important documents and personal items. I prefer to keep it close to me, Victoria refused sharply. Her eyes narrowed with suspicion as she looked at Beatrice. In fact, your behavior this whole afternoon has been making me uncomfortable. First, you're hysterical about a robbery, and now you're obsessed with moving my handbag. What is really going on? Hearing the rising anger in Victoria's tone, Ethan immediately intervened. His face was beet red with humiliation. His mother's behavior was completely irrational. Mom, sit down in your chair. Now, Ethan commanded in a low, threatening voice. Do not disturb our guests' belongings. Let Mrs. Sterling sit in peace. Beatrice slowly backed away, her face ashen. She collapsed into the armchair, her legs having completely lost their strength. She stared at the bag in Victoria's lap with a look of profound despair. Her heart was racing so fast it felt like it would leap out of her chest. From a corner of the room, Clara stood gracefully, holding the crystal teapot, which was still steaming. She approached the coffee table with a calm demeanor, a gentle smile on her lips. "Let me pour you some more tea, Mrs. Sterling." "It seems we still have much to discuss this evening," Clara offered, her voice soft and soothing, as if no storm had ever rocked the house. Victoria looked at Clara, and for the first time that afternoon, the stern woman's face softened. She nodded slowly. "Thank you, Clara. At least there's still one sane person in this house." Clara poured the tea slowly. As she did, she caught a glimpse of her mother-in-law out of the corner of her eye, sitting frozen, shivering in silence, watching her own slow and steady destruction approach. The antique grandfather clock in the corner of the living room ticked with a steady rhythm, its sound seeming to amplify the suffocating tension in the air. Ethan sat on a single sofa, trying desperately to salvage the atmosphere by discussing the framework of his company's partnership proposal. But his voice was stiff, his mind still reeling from the earlier search. Across from him, Victoria listened to Ethan's presentation, with one hand propping up her chin. Her aristocratic face was as cold as ice. The polite, superficial smile was long gone. Her Hermes Birkin bag was once again placed beside her on the sofa cushion as she needed both hands to flip through the proposal documents Ethan had handed her. And at the other end of the sofa, Beatrice sat like a condemned prisoner awaiting her turn at the gallows. A cold sweat soaked her back, making her silk dress feel sticky and uncomfortable. Her eyes darted relentlessly towards the black handbag. Her mind was spinning wildly, like a top that had lost its balance. How? How can I get that envelope without anyone seeing? Panic had completely eroded what was left of Beatrice's sanity. Her logic was gone, replaced by an overwhelming fear. Fear of having to replace the $20,000 of foundation money out of her own pocket. Fear of being accused of embezzlement. And worst of all, fear that Victoria would open that bag at any moment. So, the estimated return on investment is approximately 18 months. "Victoria," Ethan's voice droned on, trying to sound professional despite the exhaustion in his eyes. Victoria nodded slowly, turning a page in the proposal. "The numbers are reasonable, but as I said earlier, Ethan, business isn't just about numbers. It's about who you're doing business with. Integrity." Victoria placed a deliberate emphasis on the last word, her eyes flicking for a second towards Beatrice, who immediately looked down in agitation. Hearing the word integrity was like a hammer blow to Beatrice's chest. She couldn't take it anymore. She had to separate Victoria from that bag. She needed a distraction, a big one. "Oh!" Beatrice suddenly cried out, her voice sharp, cutting Ethan off mid-sentence. She clutched her head with both hands, her face contorting in a mask of 100% fabricated pain. "My head! Oh my goodness, I feel so dizzy. My vision is suddenly going blurry." Ethan stopped his presentation, looking at his mother with a mixture of suspicion and exhaustion. "Mom, what is it now? If you're not feeling well, you should go upstairs and rest. I can handle this." No, it's fine, dear. It's probably just from the shock of the money scare earlier," Beatrice said, forcing herself to stand, her legs intentionally trembling. "I just need to take my medication. Ethan, could you please get my pillbox from the drawer in the cabinet by the TV?" Ethan let out a long sigh and set down his pen. Not wanting to prolong the drama in front of his guest, he finally stood up and walked towards the wooden cabinet across the room, turning his back on the sofa. This was her chance. A crucial, split-second opportunity. The moment Ethan turned his back, Beatrice made her move. But instead of walking towards the stairs to rest as she'd claimed, she strode quickly towards the coffee table in front of Victoria. Her initial plan was to pretend to reach for a glass of water, then intentionally trip on the edge of the thick rug and lunge towards the sofa, knocking the bag over and spilling its contents. It was a desperate, foolish plan. However, because her legs were genuinely shaking from panic, and her eyes were focused solely on the Hermes bag, the heel of her slipper actually did catch on the tassel of the Persian rug under the table. Her balance was completely lost. "Ah!" Beatrice shrieked in genuine panic. Her body tilted forward at a speed she couldn't control. Her hands flailed in the air, grasping for something to hold onto, but all she managed to grab was the edge of the tablecloth and the armrest of the sofa. where Victoria was sitting. Crash! A loud, shattering sound echoed through the living room. Beatrice's body slammed into the glass coffee table, sending the crystal teapot and teacups crashing to the floor in a shower of fragments. Warm chamomile tea soaked into the expensive rug. But it wasn't the sound of breaking glass that made time seem to stand still. The force of Beatrice's fall against the sofa sent Victoria Sterling's Hermes Birkin bag, which was perched near the edge, flying. The black luxury bag tumbled through the air for a moment before landing upside down on the floor. Its zipper, which had never been fully closed, was now wide open. The entire contents of the bag spilled out onto the rug: a designer glasses case, a long red leather wallet, a gold-plated lipstick tube, a pack of tissues, and a thick brown manila envelope. It was so full that the impact with the floor caused the rubber band holding the money inside to snap. The torn corner of the envelope could no longer contain its contents. A cascade of pink and green $100 bills burst forth, scattering in a very visible pile on the rug, right at Victoria Sterling's feet. A thick, suffocating silence immediately fell over the room. It felt as if even breathing was forbidden. In the kitchen, Clara, who was holding an empty tray, froze. She leaned her back against the wall, closed her eyes, and allowed a very, very faint smile to grace her lips. The bomb had finally detonated. Ethan, who had just opened the cabinet drawer, spun around. His mouth fell open as he stared in horror at the chaos in his living room. His mother was sprawled on the floor in a humiliating heap, surrounded by broken crystal and a puddle of tea. But Ethan's eyes quickly locked onto the mess, scattered near Victoria's feet, a pile of cash coming out of a brown envelope. "Mom!" Ethan yelled, rushing towards her. Beatrice scrambled frantically, gasping for breath. Her knee stung from a piece of broken crystal, but she didn't care. Her eyes were wide with terror at the sight of that damned envelope, now exposed for everyone to see. Her animal instincts took over. In a desperate, final move, her trembling hand shot out, trying to scoop up the envelope and the scattered money and pull them into her arms. Thwack! The sharp, pointed heel of Victoria Sterling's shoe came down on the back of Beatrice's hand, with enough force to make the older woman cry out in pain. Beatrice's movement stopped instantly. She slowly looked up, meeting Victoria's gaze. If Victoria's face had been as cold as ice before, it was now dark with an indescribable fury. Her jaw was clenched, and her eyes stared down at Beatrice with a look of profound disgust, as if she were looking at a cockroach crawling on her plate. "Take your hand off my property," Victoria hissed. Her voice wasn't loud like Beatrice's had been. It was low, deep, and vibrating with restrained rage, but it was that very tone that sent a chill down Ethan's spine. Beatrice quickly yanked her trembling hand back, scrambling into a sitting position on the rug. Her face was as white as a sheet, her lips moving silently. Victoria slowly bent down. She ignored her red wallet. She ignored her expensive lipstick. With a look of revulsion, she picked up the thick manila envelope using only 2 fingers, letting a few $100 bills flutter back to the rug. She held the envelope up high, right in front of Beatrice's and Ethan's faces. Her eyes scanned the faded stamp in the corner of the envelope, a stamp that read, "Children's Hospital Foundation." "What is this, Beatrice?" Victoria asked coldly. Her tone was lethal. She had even dropped the polite pretense and was now using Beatrice's first name. That's, Beatrice stammered, paralyzed. Tears began to stream down her face, but this time, they were not fake. They were tears of pure, unadulterated fear. Her throat was locked tight. "I asked you, what is this?" Victoria raised her voice an octave, enough to intimidate anyone in the room. "Is this the envelope from your foundation? The one you were screaming was stolen from your safe? The $20,000 you accused your own daughter-in-law of taking?" Ethan swallowed hard. His intelligent mind was working at maximum speed, but even he was struggling to process the reality before his eyes. "Victoria, I don't understand. How could that money—" Ethan pointed at the envelope with a shaking hand. "How could the stolen money be inside your bag?" Victoria turned to look at Ethan, her gaze so sharp it felt like it could strip him of his dignity. "An excellent question, Ethan. How could it be?" Victoria let out a hollow, contemptuous laugh. She turned her glare back to Beatrice, who was still whimpering on the floor. I came to this house with the good intention of doing business. I sat on this sofa. I never once left my handbag unattended. And I certainly did not go upstairs to break into your mother's safe. Victoria threw the thick envelope into Beatrice's lap with disgust. Do you think I'm a fool, Beatrice? She snapped, her anger finally erupting. She stood up from the sofa, towering over Beatrice like a judge, about to deliver a death sentence. You deliberately slipped this money into my bag. You think I'm some cheap woman who can be bribed with $20,000 to sign your son's proposal? You have insulted my integrity. You have insulted my honor. No, that's not it, Victoria. I swear to God, it's not. Beatrice shrieked hysterically, practically groveling at Victoria's feet. I never intended to bribe you. I would die before I bribed you. Then what was it? Victoria cut her off fiercely. If it wasn't a bribe, then why did you secretly put money in my bag? Were you trying to set me up? Did you want to accuse me of stealing your foundation's money? Is that it? Were you trying to blackmail me? This barrage of accusations from Victoria shattered what was left of Beatrice's logic. No, this is all wrong. All of Victoria's assumptions are wrong. She had never targeted Victoria. Her target was Clara. She had to correct this, or her reputation among her socialite friends would be ruined forever. In a moment of absolute panic, a person's mental defenses crumble, and the unfiltered truth often comes spilling out. That's what happened to Beatrice. Driven by an overwhelming fear of Victoria's wrath and the pressure of Ethan's demanding stare, Beatrice's brain short-circuited. All she wanted was to clear her name of bribing and blackmailing her esteemed guest. I didn't put it in your bag, Beatrice screamed, her voice a high-pitched, desperate wail. Her tears mixed with her ruined mascara, making her face a grotesque mask. Don't lie, Ethan yelled, his voice now just as loud, the veins in his neck bulging. That bag has been right there the whole time. You're the one who's been pacing around, acting strange, trying to touch Mrs. Sterling's bag. If it wasn't you, then who was it? A ghost? Tell me the truth, Mom. Where did that money really come from? And who put it there? Cornered by her own son, Beatrice's last defense shattered. Without thinking about the consequences of her words, without considering who was listening, her mouth moved faster than her brain. I took the money out of the safe, Ethan. I brought the money downstairs. Beatrice wailed in frustration, pounding her fists on the carpet. But I swear on my life, I did not put it in Victoria's bag. I put that money in Clara's closet. I put it under your stack of shirts, Ethan. I put it there. Instantly, as if a wizard had cast a freezing spell, the entire living room fell silent. There were no sobs, no gasps for air, only the loud ticking of the grandfather clock, marking time to the echo of the fatal words Beatrice had just spoken. I put that money in Clara's closet. Beatrice slapped her hands over her mouth, her eyes as wide as they could possibly go. Her heart felt like it had dropped into her stomach. Her body froze. She had just realized what had come out of her own mouth. She had just dug her own grave, climbed inside, and buried herself alive. Ethan took 2 slow steps back. His face, which had been red with anger, was now deathly pale. He stared at his mother with a look of such profound shock. It was as if he were seeing a monster for the very first time. What did you just say? Ethan's voice was a trembling, barely audible whisper. You put it in Clara's closet? Under my shirts? Ethan's brilliant mind, accustomed to analyzing business data, processed this new information with horrifying speed and clarity. He pieced together all the events of the day. His mother's insults at breakfast, her showing off the money, her command for Clara to stay in the kitchen, the forced search of their room. It was all a setup. It was all a sick, twisted performance. It was all an act, Ethan breathed, his chest rising and falling rapidly. You staged this entire thing. You pretended the money was stolen just so you could accuse Clara of being a thief. You wanted me to hate my own wife, to divorce her and brand her a criminal. You wanted to destroy her life. Beatrice shook her head violently, her hands reaching for the hem of her son's trousers. Ethan, listen to me, son. I did it for your own good. That small-town girl isn't worthy of you. I just wanted to clear the way for you to find a wife who is on our level. Ethan kicked his mother's hand away with a violent jerk, as if her touch were contaminated. "Don't touch me," he roared, his voice breaking with a mixture of rage, soul-crushing shame, and a deep, agonizing heartbreak. "You're insane. You're a criminal." Across the room, Victoria watched the spectacle with an expression of undisguised disgust. Her offense at being the target of a potential bribe had now morphed into a profound revulsion for this family's morals. "What a truly satisfying, third-rate soap opera," Victoria said, her voice dripping with a sarcasm so thick you could cut it with a knife. "So you were trying to frame your own daughter-in-law, Beatrice?" "The work of a truly evil mother-in-law," Victoria scoffed, shaking her head. "But the question remains. If you put it in her closet, how did your filthy money end up in my bag?" "Ah, don't answer. I don't care. Perhaps it was divine intervention, showing me your true colors before I made a grave mistake." Victoria calmly knelt and collected her scattered belongings, her wallet, her glasses case, her lipstick, and put them back in her Hermes bag. She left the manila envelope and the $20,000 lying on the tea-soaked carpet. She stood up straight, smoothed out her silk dress, and looked at Ethan with a pitying, condescending gaze. "Ethan," Victoria called, her voice now calm again. But every word was a death sentence for the young man's career. Ethan swallowed hard, looking at Victoria with desperation. "Victoria, please, I can explain. This is purely a private family issue. It has nothing to do with the professionalism of my company." Victoria held up a hand, silencing Ethan instantly. "To me, a business is a reflection of its leader's character," she said firmly. "How can I entrust tens of millions of dollars to a leader who can't even recognize the poison in his own home? Who allows his wife to be viciously slandered by his own mother? If your mother can so easily concoct a dirty scheme to destroy her own family, who's to say you won't concoct a dirty scheme to cheat me out of my investment?" Ethan hung his head, his body shaking as he fought back tears of devastation. He couldn't argue. Everything Victoria said was 100% true and logical. "Our investment deal is officially canceled, as of right now," Victoria declared, without a hint of hesitation, "and you can be sure that I will be sharing this disgraceful incident with all of my business associates. I will not allow my friends to get trapped doing business with a family that has no basic morals." Beatrice, still crumpled on the floor, let out a choked sob. "Victoria, please, don't! Punish me! Don't ruin my son! I'm sorry." Victoria didn't even glance at Beatrice. She slung her Hermes bag onto her arm and walked with an elegant, yet deadly, stride towards the front door. Her footsteps echoed in the silent living room. She opened the oak door, turned one last time, and gave the shattered family a final, cold look. "Get your house in order, Ethan, before you dream of managing a major project. Good afternoon." The door closed with a soft thud that sounded like a judge's gavel confirming a death sentence. Victoria Sterling was gone, and she had taken the future of Ethan's company and the family's social standing with her. Ethan stood frozen in the middle of the room, his face blank. His ambition and months of hard work had been utterly destroyed in a matter of minutes, all because of his mother's ego and hatred. He looked down at his mother, who was now wailing uncontrollably on the carpet, mourning the scattered money and her own belated regret. There was no pity in Ethan's heart, only a profound disgust that made his stomach churn. From the hallway, Clara stepped forward slowly. She was no longer hiding. Her face wore a perfectly natural expression of shock and teary-eyed devastation. She walked over to Ethan and gently touched her husband's arm. "Honey," Clara called, her voice trembling, as if she had just heard a heart-shattering truth. "So, all of this, Beatrice was framing me? She wanted to send me to jail?" Clara's soft question was the final knife twist in Ethan's sanity. He turned and looked at his wife's innocent face, the woman who had silently and faithfully served him despite the constant humiliation. An immense, crushing guilt slammed into Ethan's chest. Ignoring his wailing mother, Ethan pulled Clara into his arms. He held his wife tightly, burying his face in her shoulder, and he wept. Yes, the proud young director wept and begged for forgiveness. "I'm so sorry, honey. I'm so sorry. I've been such a fool. I failed to protect you," Ethan whispered hoarsely between sobs. "I promise you, from this day forward, no one will ever be allowed to hurt you again, not even my own mother." We're moving out of this house. Tonight, I promise. Clara returned her husband's embrace. She gently patted his back, playing the role of the forgiving, angelic wife. But over her husband's shoulder, Clara's dark eyes stared directly at Beatrice, who was still a pathetic heap on the floor. That night, the house was as silent as a tomb. There was no dinner, no conversation. Ethan had packed 2 large suitcases with his and Clara's essentials. He had made up his mind. He refused to speak a single word to his mother. To him, her actions weren't a simple mistake. They were a premeditated crime, and they were unforgivable. Ethan was currently in the front yard, on the phone with a car service, arranging for them to be taken to a hotel for the night before they started looking for a new place the next day. In the still messy living room, Beatrice sat on the floor with a vacant stare. Her hair was a tangled mess, her eyes swollen and red. She had gathered the $20,000 and stuffed it back into the torn envelope, which she now clutched tightly to her chest. She had lost everything in a single afternoon. She had lost her son's biggest investment. She had lost her reputation. And most painfully, she had lost the love and respect of her only son. The sound of soft footsteps came from the stairs. Clara, now changed into casual clothes, walked towards the living room. She was carrying a small dustpan and a dry cloth. Without a word, Clara knelt near the shattered crystal teapot. Calmly and patiently, she began to pick up the sharp fragments of glass one by one, placing them in the dustpan. She was cleaning up the mess her mother-in-law had made. Beatrice slowly looked up, her red-rimmed eyes fixing on Clara. There was still a flicker of hatred there, but it was overshadowed by a much larger fear and helplessness. Beatrice now realized she had picked a fight with the wrong opponent. The daughter-in-law she had dismissed as a simple, weak-minded girl was actually a deadly strategist. Clara didn't need to scream, or cry, or lie to win. She had masterfully turned the trap back on its creator, allowing Beatrice to dig her own grave, climb in, and then cover herself with dirt. "You!" Beatrice's voice was hoarse and trembling, almost a choke. "You're a devil. You planned all of this. You're the one who moved the money." Clara paused in her task of wiping up the last of the tea from the carpet. She set the cloth down and slowly raised her head, looking directly into her terrified mother-in-law's eyes. The mask of the innocent, downtrodden daughter-in-law was gone. Clara's face was utterly serene, but it radiated an aura of absolute dominance. The corner of her mouth slowly pulled into a cold, bone-chilling smirk, a true victor's smile. Clara leaned forward slightly. Her voice was a soft, chilling whisper, like an icy winter wind. "I didn't plan this, Beatrice," Clara whispered, her eyes never leaving Beatrice's. "You set the stage. You wrote the script. You cast the actors. I was just the dutiful daughter-in-law, helping you bring your production to its spectacular conclusion." Beatrice swallowed with great difficulty. A shiver ran down her entire body upon hearing that indirect confession. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She had been and truly and utterly conquered. "And look," Clara continued, her smile widening as she slowly stood up, holding the dustpan full of broken glass. She looked down at her mother-in-law as a queen might look at a servant. "It was a very successful show, wasn't it? Everyone was entertained, especially me." From the front door, Ethan's footsteps approached. Instantly, Clara's expression changed. The cold smile vanished in a blink, replaced by a soft, sad, and exhausted look. "Are you done packing, honey?" Ethan asked as he entered the living room, completely ignoring his mother's presence on the floor. Clara turned to her husband with a gentle look. She nodded slowly. "Yes, sweetie. I was just cleaning up this broken glass so no one gets hurt." A sad smile touched Ethan's lips. He felt another pang of guilt, seeing his wife's kindness, still thinking of others' safety, even after being so terribly hurt. He put a protective arm around Clara's shoulders. "Let Maria handle the rest tomorrow. Come on, the car is here. Let's get out of here. You never have to set foot in this house again." "Okay, honey," Clara replied obediently. Ethan guided Clara towards the front door, leaving Beatrice to her quiet sobs in the dim corner of the room. Just before they stepped over the threshold, Clara glanced back one last time at the figure of her mother-in-law. She said nothing more. She just gave a slow, deliberate wink, a sweet but painful farewell gesture before walking out into her new life, leaving the great matriarch to drown in her own regret and ruin forever.